Let me quickly do this.
We should be live now.
Are we? Let me check.
Indeed we are. Indeed we are. There's a little red live
I think
button
so.
glowing. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool, there we go. And we are well live. Awesome. Sorry, I'm a bit slow because I'm typing. Welcome everybody to the weekly session of AWS Africa Office Hours, where we answer your technical questions. Hopefully answer the technical questions. Otherwise, we will be talking about some other interesting random topics. And today in the studio, I have got Darko, which you've seen before, and I have got Alex for the first time. So I think Alex can introduce himself first, and then Darko can go next.
Sure. Hello. Thanks, Kobus. Hello, everyone. I'm Alex. I'm also a developer advocate from Italy. And I have a web development background. I love machine learning and data analytics too. So let's see what kind of questions come up today.
And my name is Darko Mesaros. I'm a developer advocate as the same way my other colleagues are. I'm based in Berlin, Germany. My background is very similar to Kobus's. A lot of things are similar between us, including the head and the beard and the background. I come from an operations background and DevOps and all those automation loveliness. So good to see you all again.
Cool. And I am pretty much what Darko said, except based in Cape Town, and Kobus, not Darko.
Yes.
No, it's Alex, I don't know if you saw while we're waiting for our first questions to come in, but Darko and myself did a refactor of not a refactor, just a rehosting of my blog sites that I hadn't touched in 3 years on a stream that we did. And when the theme came up, Dark was like, wait, hold on a second. And then we looked at his blog, and it's pretty much the exact same theme. My one is just in Jekyll, and his one is just in Hugo.
Yeah.
And we were like, no, come on, this, yeah.
They're not even trying to be different.
It keeps getting better.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I was also comparing our streams. He did a stream yesterday. He did like a Let's Code stream yesterday, and he did like a super awesome website in HTML. And the day before that, I did the same exact website in HTML. It was not super awesome. It was super amazing or something like that. But I took an exact same screenshot of what he did. So yeah. He's my brother from another mother. So yeah.
No, literally. Cool. Yeah, so welcome for the people that have joined us now. I see a couple, if I look here at the stats that are online. So this is the AWS Africa Office Hour session where we are going to attempt to answer any of your technical questions. And before we get into all of that, Alex, tell us about some fun you've had the last while, now that you've been able to leave your apartment.
No, actually, I can leave my apartment. Which is fun. I just came back from a little bit of vacation as well, so I can't really I can't complain about that at all. But yeah, I've been doing a lot of things, new things this year. I started a new podcast. I've gone back to writing more things and a lot of streams, of course, online conferences. So that's a lot of new experience. I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting used to having a light pointing at my face kind of a few hours a day. So.
Everybody is apparently now. So
yes, I still have plans to play with my one like this and do some funny fix.
But do you have any coffee to drink, guys? I brought my espresso. Nice.
I would, but I've had 4 coffees, so I suppose I need to put this down.
I'm so it. Alex, would you call it? I don't think you could call it an espresso, but how do you call a coffee that's made in a mocha pot?
I know we just call it coffee in Italy.
Okay.
That's just what coffee is here.
Okay. Yeah, it's my like that's how I make my coffee, and I'm a very proud coffee snob with it. I don't have an espresso machine. I have that, and I buy like proper coffee here in Berlin, and apparently Berlin has really good coffee, and it's a roastery here, and I grind it myself manually, like all the I give a half an hour effort for my coffee if I'm up to it. If not, I just press the little button on the capsule machine and something comes out. So
oh, nice. Hey, I see we have got Graham joining us again.
Yeah.
He's one of our very regular viewers.
Yeah.
Hi, Graham. And Grognosh, I'm not sure if that is
Ski Free
joke?
is this. Ski Free is this.
Oh, okay.
That's Ski Free. If you ever played Ski Free, if you've not, Kobus,
I was trying to figure out if this is one of those calls for help, like if I say this weird phrase, I'm in trouble. But no, I don't know. No, please send me that link. I'll be curious to look at that game. Well, no, I won't because I don't have time for games, but I'll pretend.
Cool.
Yeah,
Do
cool.
you have any
Okay.
questions, guys? We are here
Yeah.
for you.
So maybe Alex, tell us something like technical stuff that you've been playing with in the last week, because I'm sure you've touched at least one interesting AWS service.
Yeah, I keep playing a lot with Lambda, of course, but I wanted to learn something new in the last couple of months, so I started playing with GameLift. Can you imagine that?
GameLift.
Ooh.
So around July, I thought, what if I sit down for a week and build a game? And then I learned a lot in like a couple of weeks. So that was a fun experience. I do a lot of web development, and I found a nice framework for developing games in the browser. And then I learned how you do multiplayer games, how you need a web server to handle all the centralized logic. That's a lot of fun. Highly recommend it.
And how does GameLift fit into like I've heard of GameLift. It's like our solution to help game servers, like backend game servers, if I understand correctly. How does that fit into this story?
I mean, it took me the first week just to realize how it's useful. Because I thought that most of the games do 99% of the magic on the client, right?
Okay.
That's what you perceive as a gamer. But that's not true. Like, actually, what you see is usually just a user interface. And whatever you click, whatever you type, goes to a server, and that server is going to compute all the logic, all the gravity, all the collisions, everything centralized that you don't want players to mess up with. That's at least in the client server kind of architecture.
Right.
And so GameLift is useful for those kind of games where you want to have rooms of multiplayer sessions. So you want to have a dedicated room that optimizes for latency between players, and you want to have pretty powerful machines that can run all that centralized checks and gameplay coordination centrally. So it does a lot of magic for even using spot instances. You can configure multiple regions and multiple instance types. We're talking about EC2. So it's pretty powerful, and it does a lot of the heavy lifting that you will need to do yourself to orchestrate thousands or even millions of concurrent multiplayer rooms. So I think it's a pretty cool service.
Well, fun one. We actually have a question for you, Alex, which is how are you handling the data for the game?
That kind of depends, actually. There is a lot of data that is about. Did you lose me? No, you're good? Okay. So there is a lot of data that's about the session itself, and that might be handled by the game server right there. But if you think about it in a game, you have a lot of data that is not about that specific session, like your players information or your coins balance, or things that survive the single multiplayer session. So a lot of those things could be in a relational database or in a NoSQL database, like any web application as well. So most architectures are pretty common, like 3-tier web applications, but the client is a game. And sometimes you have special things for data analysis because you have a lot of events going on in the game, and you may want to use those events to customize the experience or to connect players with each other if they do similar things. So sometimes you have a data analysis pipeline, so data might go somewhere else, maybe in a data lake or in a data warehouse. But it's quite similar to architectures you would build for a website or an e-commerce application.
No, definitely. I can actually brag. I have worked on a game that is in Steam.
Oh,
Wow.
Tell us about that.
Tell us about it.
No, it was an interesting experience. It was a original Nintendo handheld rewrite to desktop. So
interesting.
Yeah. So it's a horror game. I did a lot of the automation. I actually ended up using AWS for the builds, which was quite fun because there was this interesting bug at that point. This was before we had any EC2 instances with GPUs. So Unity, it was written in Unity, and then what would happen is you open up Unity. The first thing it does is ask you for the license key. So you punch in the license key. As soon as you hit save, it would crash, but it would somehow semi-persist that, I think, a memory or something. Because then what you could do is, once you've done that once, you could then run the build via the command line. Because you couldn't do, the only way to enter the license key was via the app itself, but it would always crash. The problem was every single time you rebooted, it would not persist that value. So every single time how the build worked is like you spun up the EC2 Windows instance, punch in the license key, hit save, crash, and then you could build as many times as you want in a row. But then every stop and start, you had to do this by hand. It was like a little bit of annoying, but at least it was fast, because previously what happened is that the build was running on literally a machine in a cupboard at someone's house trying to upload over ADSL. And it was a couple of gigs, which was every Friday would have been I think a 5-6 hour job, and that's if it didn't break. And got that down to, I think, like 10 minutes. Just a lot of fun. Yeah.
That's very cool.
Power up the cloud. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, like my dream was always like, oh, I want to do game development. I want to be part of that because I love games, and never even get close to any of the game things. So like when I hear you guys talk about it, and I like, oh, that's very cool. I really do.
Actually, the reason why I started programming was I wanted to build games for my friends. That's how I approached it. Yeah. Like in 2007, something like that. That was fun. Yeah.
That's how I approach it. I did like on my Commodore 64. That's how I did my first games back then. And I like, oh, I want to do this, but I never got competent enough in any language to do it. So no. But that's very cool.
No, I think my first like game development, if you can call it that, was back in the day when Red Alert came out. It's one of the Command & Conquer games. You could edit the config file. My favorite thing was making the little normal machine gun soldiers have the Tesla attack. Yeah, and then you just swarm someone with it. It was like, it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
That's a lot of things we've done, right? So
interesting thing that I want to throw in here. So I don't see any technical questions. Please send them our way. But a very, very interesting thing that came up this week was I did a 3-part webinar series on data processing. So one session on Amazon Kinesis Firehose, then one on AWS Glue, and then the third one on Amazon QuickSight. So it's hey, how do I ingest events? How do I store them? How do I transform them? And lastly, how do I actually display them? And very, very interesting was that the Glue session was by far the most interesting. It seems that there are a lot of customers out there that are wanting to move data around and transform the data, which, if you think about it, kind of makes sense. So that was a interesting realization for me, because I thought, getting the data in might be the most interesting one of the three.
Yeah, I think now that's one of the, I wouldn't say the easy part, but I'm a big fan of Kinesis Firehose, and with that, you don't really need to write a single line of code to ingest data. So I highly suggest you have a look at that.
But how does that exactly work? So that's always like, I've never done with anything with data in that size. So I know always that you give your data to Kinesis Firehose, and then it puts the data in S3, for example. But how do you give your data to Kinesis? Like how does it I understand that you do that, but how, like, do you make an API call to it, or
you have a put record or put records API call, and that's the same interface of Kinesis streams, by the way. So you can almost interchangeably call one or the other, and so you can put record or batch of records into the service. And I think it's pretty cool that with Firehose, you don't have to do any capacity planning. You don't need to decide how many shards you have. It's all, let's say, serverless, so that if you don't put any data, you don't pay for it, which is pretty cool. And if you have spikes, you don't really have to do any auto scaling. It's all managed by the service. And then the thing that I really loved back when I was a customer was that with one checkbox, I could say, now go and compress all the data for me, and now go and encrypt all the data for me into S3. And you can even decide for how long the data is buffered into Kinesis Firehose before it's actually written. So you could say 10 megabytes or 100 megabytes or 30 seconds or 5 minutes. So you decide how compressed the data is going to be. And I think one of the best thing you can do there is say, please also convert the data into columnar. Parquet
Okay.
format.
Yeah.
So when you go
Yeah.
and import it into, if you want, not import it, but when you go and query the data, it's like having an index on every single field of your schema. So you can just scan exactly the data that you need, and you don't need to scan the whole file or the whole data set. So that's super powerful.
But when,
Yeah, I
when you
must
do
say.
when you do that data, just a quick question here is: can you pass any data to a Kinesis file stream, like file stream, Firehose? Can you pass any data to it, or is it just some specific type of data?
It depends what you want to do downstream. If you want to use it to build a data lake and then
Okay.
query it with Athena, I think there are a few formats supported like JSON and CSV and Parquet, and there's another Apache format I'm not recalling
Spark, I want to
right
say.
now. Yeah, it could be. It's still like a compressed format for columnar kind of queries. But you could throw in any data and it would be buffered and then compressed and encrypted into S3. And actually, S3 is not the only destination. You could also use Redshift or Elasticsearch as well.
Where it actually, but the fun part there is that it always ends up in S3 first, because S3 is used as the buffering mechanism. So streams in directly into S3, and then from there bounces it to where else you want it. Cool. We actually have another question. This one is, I hope Alex knows this, because I'm not that good with API Gateway yet.
We can try.
So, can you see the question, Alex?
Where is the question? Oh, in the comments.
The question will be on the screen.
Let me have a look.
Yeah.
It should be on the screen as well.
Here we go. Okay, so that's a long question. Let me have a look.
So hopefully Alex gives us a long answer. Yeah. But Dr. Wally reads it quickly just since you don't know Firehose. If I told you, and let me read off my notes here for the pricing. If you sent 1,000 records a second, each are 3K big. So that works out to 4.88 megabytes per second, total of 12.07 terabytes for a 30-day month.
Okay.
How much would you expect to pay for that?
$50?
Okay, no, it's a little bit more than that. Remember, it's 12 terabytes, not gigabytes.
Okay. I don't know.
$358.
Wow. But I guess you wouldn't be ingesting that data. Well, okay. If you're ingesting that data every month, you probably earn money from that data. So that's another thing.
Remember, this is 1,000 records a second. That's not an insignificant amount of data coming at you.
Absolutely.
So let's hop to Alex and put him on the spot with API Gateway.
Yeah, so the question is about API Gateway and how we can validate the credentials provided by the client. And that kind of depends on how you are actually, what was your identity provider and what kind of authentication and authorization mechanism you want to have. You could use IAM, you could use Cognito, you could use your own custom authorizer as well. So what typically happens is that you include an authorization header in your HTTP request. And in that header, you put whatever is needed for the authorization. It could be an API key, it could be a JSON web token, it could be something custom that you have built yourself. And if you take the state of the art, I would say, what most developers are doing in web development, you are using a JSON web token. And there you find a lot of information. And also, let's say, to keep it super simple, a way to validate that JSON web token was signed with the appropriate key, so that it was generated by your application server side. It couldn't have been tampered from the client. So at every single request, you can go and validate that token before you actually invoke your backend. And typically, either you could do that if you're using the Lambda proxy configuration to basically parse the headers and validate it. But I would actually recommend you do that as a custom authorizer, which is still a Lambda function that is executed before your backend. But the output of that custom authorizer is actually cached, and you can configure for how long that output is cached. So you don't really have to go and validate the token at every single API call. And also the response of this custom authorizer can be a lot more complex than just yes or no. You could say, okay, this identity can only invoke this API or this endpoint or this method, like only get or only post. So you can be very granular in the response of the custom authorizer. So yeah, you don't really have to do it in the backend Lambda function. You can do it in the custom Lambda authorizer itself.
Okay.
Cool. That sounds awesome. Sorry, I'm just quickly double checking my traffic over here to make sure that everything is good with the stream.
There's a follow-up to this from Charles Cookie Monster. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're using the certificate itself, all the HTTPS, DSL kind of stuff that's managed by API Gateway, you don't really have to do that in your backend. It's not something you want to do in the application layer itself. If the certificate is invalid, you don't even want to hit your backend Lambda function, right? So even if you're using the API key of API Gateway, that's not really an authorization mechanism, because you cannot really generate an API key for every single consumer. You might have an API key, I don't know, for groups of users or for different types of users, and that's like an additional check you can have. But that also allows you to categorize different users and have different throttling and rate limiting mechanism based on that API key. So API key is more useful for that purpose than for authorization itself, in a way.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. Let me just check here. Yeah, I think so. Charles Cookie Monster says that they guess they'll have to go for a custom authorizer in the end.
Yeah, if you want to do something more custom, I would do that.
Cool. Awesome. Your turn, Darko. What did you do that was fun this week while we wait for questions?
I've built demos. I've built a few demos. I've been playing around with CDK as I do a lot. I built demos for an upcoming Awesome Day in Sub-Saharan Africa, Shield event. Yeah, I've been doing some demos for that, preparing a lot of things. I mean, from simple things like doing auto-scaling groups to not so simple things like doing Route 53 on a global scale. And I found out some limitations in CDK, which I'm trying to figure out how to do it. For example, if you have multiple stacks in CDK, it's impossible to pass values between them. So at least on a CDK level. So you would have to do either exports, and exports work only in a single region. So if you do multi-region stacks in CDK, no bueno, doesn't work. So you have to either use something like hard code values or do things like pass things to parameter store and query those things in parameter store.
Going to suggest that.
Not
ideal.
It's not ideal. I wish there was a feature that you can just query outputs from a specific stack once it's launched, but that's not a possibility, at least not in the way you think it is. So it's
that would be magic.
It's a bit complex. That would be magic.
It would be against CloudFormation itself.
Exactly.
How do you do that?
And this is not a limitation of
use Terraform.
Use Terraform.
Use Terraform. Yeah. but yes, this is a limitation of CloudFormation, not CDK per se. So because CloudFormation is very region specific, and so if I use the same application to launch, for example, this is what I want to do. I want to create a global web application running in Sydney and in Dublin, and I deploy a stack to Sydney, creates an auto-scaling group with a web application, whatever, load balancer. They do the same thing in Dublin, the exact same thing. And then I have a third stack that creates a Route 53 record that does location-based routing, right? So, and one of the things that I need to pass to that thing are the DNS entries or DNS outputs of those load balancers within my the other two stacks, right? And I cannot get them dynamically. So it's
maybe the global accelerator can deal with all of that for you, like multi-region kind of things.
It can. The thing is, like, even Route 53 can do it easily. The problem is it's impossible to do it in multiple stacks like the way I want to do it, right? So I could do a record per stack, and then I would have to create a global record that will use hard-coded values from those things. Like I would know that I will have a dublin.myawesomewebapp.com and I will have sydney.myawesomewebapp.com, and I would use those two hard-coded values in my top level stack, which it works. But there's better ways. There should be a better way to do it. So at least in my case, I don't like to hard code anything. I think everything should be very idempotent when it comes to naming and those things. So that was my I wouldn't call it a fail of the week, but it was something I've tried to do, and I was really excited about it. And like, wah, wah, it didn't work. So, but I am gonna play around with it. So I did actually question people in the CDK audience, in our CDK team about it, and no, it's not possible right now. So, but hey,
No, that was an interesting thing for me always, because honestly, I haven't dug into this to understand the underlying technical reason for it. But it was odd because my background is Terraform. I used CloudFormation, I think, in 2013 last, and from then onwards, pretty much just Terraform. And this is something that's been available for quite a while. And granted, the way they do it is interesting because so when you're on Terraform, you've got the thing called the state file that keeps track of everything that it created and what it did last time. And there's actually a mechanism that you can say, take that state file and make it a referenceable object. And then anything you define as an output in there, you can reference from another state. Cool. So you can do this. However, you can get yourself into nice circular dependency situations where you set something up, you build it over here, then you start referencing it over here, then this references this again, and it's
wow. Okay, no.
Which is interesting when you try and spin up the whole infrastructure from scratch again for a new environment. So there are some cons to it as well.
But also, I found that one interesting thing I liked about CDK is if you create an RDS database, right? So the way you create an RDS database in CDK is, well, simple, right? A database cluster, it creates 2 database instances for you. Define what engine you do. You define a user, but you do not define a password. You cannot state a password at all. So there's no way to pass a password. The way you do a password is it automatically creates a secret string in Secrets Manager. And so it does it for you. It creates this horrible string, but it does it for you. So basically, when you want to use the database, you just have to reference that thing. So I like that because there's no way you can enter a bad password. So.
Or you could use RDS proxy and not even care about referencing the secret.
Or that, So the only way you can do explicit passwords in CDK for RDS is by the use of proxies. So that's one of the ways I found it. But if you just want to do it standardly, it does it for you. So and I like that. I like using external reference points for passwords, and I like, I'm a fan of password managers. So I think for any kind of secret credentials or any secret information you wish to kind of move back and forth, you should use a vault, a secret store, or a secrets manager, or whatever you want. So those kind of things are very important. So
I think the biggest challenge I had there when handling passwords for databases, for example, is that you do want to rotate them at some point, right? So I'm a big fan of the rotation feature of the Secrets Manager.
Exactly.
But also, as an application developer, you can go and fetch that secret from the store or from the Secrets Manager service. But then that at some point it's going to be invalid. So you can cache it for a while, and maybe you want to refresh it every day or every hour or every week, depending on how often you rotate it. And I'm also a big fan of how the Amazon RDS proxy will handle that for you. You really don't have to care about rotating credentials or invalid passwords and stuff like that in your application code.
But you need a password to the proxy, right? At least that. I'm not sure how that works. So
you can do that with IAM. So if
you can do it. Okay.
As IAM permissions to talk to the proxy, then the proxy will handle this, secure communication with the database. So that's pretty. That's much easier. That's amazing.
Yeah, and Goran is asking here in chat, why not IAM for RDS? Is it possible to do IAM for RDS?
And you can do that. Go on.
But you can set that up, and then the credentials are basically generated via your IAM role or group/user that you have to actually connect to it. But so you can actually do that as well.
How does an application do a connection string then? So like I'm a MySQL application and I want to just connect to that, right? MySQL database.
I actually have not looked at the implementation of this.
Okay, because like I assume, and this is just me being an ass, trying to it's getting a value from a variable, locally stored variable or environment variable or something like that, because I don't think that every application has the ability to just get the credentials from AWS. I mean, unless we're using a CDK, SDK, something like that. I'm like, that's my. I wonder how this works, right? From that perspective, because database connection strings are very, let's call them legacy, right? A lot of applications just require, hey, I just want a password and username, and that's it. Like, I don't know what does this fangled new IAM thing you're telling me. So yeah.
So actually, Goran is educating us on the fact that for now, you cannot actually use IAM. So apologies, guys. I think that's the long-term vision of it. You shouldn't have any password in your application code, and it's about configuring the right permissions. For now, I know it's been GA for how long? Like 3-4 months. So I'm confident we can improve on that.
But your connection to the proxy, is that protected by the password, or is that by the IAM? So like when you connect. Now, I don't know database. Like I'm being blissfully ignorant here. So I have my application, my MySQL client. I want to connect to my database through the proxy. Do I have to have authentication between myself and the proxy to do that?
So what I understood is RDS proxy to RDS.
Yeah.
You need a password, and is handled by the proxy using Secrets Manager.
Okay.
My understanding is from the application layer to the proxy, you can already use IAM.
Oh, but that's what I understood as well.
Let me check that as well.
But that's great. I mean, that's fine. As long as the proxy handles the password rotation and all that stuff, I don't really care, right? So it can be...
The proxy doesn't. I mean, it's Secrets Manager does. Or do you, sorry, wrong. The other side. Ignore.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm confusing myself now.
But then the proxy doesn't do only password management, right?
Yeah.
It will reroute the connection to any instance that is available if an instance fails, and it will do another thing that I love. What was that?
Connection pooling, the big important one.
The big thing.
So if you take these three things, that's a lot of application code you can just not write at all. And,
also
if you were not writing it would be a problem. But now you can just ignore the problem.
So the place where you would ignore this problem very often is actually when you start building out Amazon Lambda functions, because of the high concurrency that you can run there, is that storming your database becomes a bit of a problem.
Yeah. And that's what I learned about. Like, actually, Goran explained that to me way back when I was doing a recap at the Belgrade user group, and Goran was telling me, like, proxy is great because the problem with serverless applications is that there's so much of them, and like I didn't even think about it. But the limitation of a database is not about how many reads, writes, and those things. Of course, it is, but the biggest limitation is how many connections can it accept. And when you think about legacy workloads, there's one connection, two maybe, right? But when you have a serverless application, you swarm hundreds of connections to your database, and it just flops, right? So a proxy is this thing that helps a lot. So
yeah,
so that's very cool.
Yeah, that's been one of the challenges since 2015, 2016, when developers started building web applications based on Lambda. It's been a challenge. You can control. Before the proxy, you could control the maximum concurrency of a given Lambda function. Yeah. So you knew how many concurrent runtimes would be running in parallel, and each one would use and cache the database connection, but still it meant you kind of have to limit how much you could scale horizontally with Lambda, which is not the point of using Lambda.
And before RDS proxy, people were using like their own managed proxies. I know, like PG Pool for Postgres, and I'm not sure what exists for MySQL, but I know they were using their own proxies for those kind of things, at least for connection pooling. So,
but then also you have to worry about getting the credentials to that proxy pool.
Yeah.
Or setting up an instance in the middle that does that for you.
But see, Secrets Manager here is great because when it comes to rotating passwords, it does not just like change the password, but it does it very intelligently. There's a Lambda script that does that for you, right? So you can basically rotate a password for anything in Secrets Manager, right? So as long as you reference Secrets Manager for your password all the time, you don't really care what the password is. It can change the password every hour as long as your application keeps checking for that password every time it does something.
Yeah, okay, but so that little point that you have over there is where life gets interesting. Because remember that, let's say you've got 50 copies of your app running. Yeah. Now you change and rotate the password. So they can no longer use the current password, which means they all have to immediately get a new password and start hitting it again. Yeah, it's There's some nuances there. It's I've seen some interesting things happen with that. The first time it's like literally like all of the apps go like on the database.
No, absolutely, but I think the thing is the point here is how often do you need to change your password? Like, okay, something very
Every
critical.
15 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same question. How many nines do you need in your reliability? Or people say, "Oh, I need 100% uptime." Are you sure? Like, that's always a question. Like, for a lot of applications, it's perfectly fine to change the application once a month, password once a month or once every 15 days. That's perfectly fine. For those niche use cases where you have something really critical and you need to change your password every 45 minutes, then you build an application to kind of tolerate that, right? It's gonna be checking for a password every time it makes a call to an application. So that's how you can avoid that. But you wouldn't, or
you can use an open source project called Vault.
Okay, yeah. I mean, Vault.
And it
It's
will
a
be
HashiCorp
something
Vault.
around Terraform. So
Yeah, it's HashiCorp Vault, but it's the same thing. Yeah. I mean, I've been seeing people use Vault for like those kind of things. I mean, HashiCorp Vault is basically kind of a secrets manager / parameter store coming from HashiCorp, or at least before those things exist. And I know that's a great service as well.
So what it does in the background is actually super interesting because you can set it up so it's able to understand different backends. So you can, for example, if you connect it to a Postgres database server, it knows how to create a user inside Postgres with a permission set. So you provide it with the policy in terms of database level access that user can have. And then what happens is every time a version of the app starts up, it says, hey, can I get a credentials for the database, please? It goes and creates a user with a TTL on the database level for that specific instance of the app. So each app has got a different set of that, and then that also handles the rotation for you.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yep. But it doesn't always have to be a database password, right? I've seen
anything,
secrets manager being used for other things. For example, I met a developer who was integrating with the Twitter API. So sometimes you just need a token or some API key that you need to be able to invoke another API. And sometimes you also want to rotate those. So you could have used the parameter store, but what happens, when you want to rotate it and update it, sometimes they force you to update it every now and then. So you could actually use the secrets manager and customize the Lambda rotation, the rotation implementation itself to invoke Twitter and change the API key and get it back and update the secrets value. So you can do a lot of cool stuff.
My view of the secrets manager, it enables all applications to have IAM integration, basic IAM permission integration, because the only thing your application needs to have is an IAM permission to secrets manager, to that specific secret, and then you will get the password. So even if your end service, whatever, doesn't support IAM, right? You can make support. You can kind of stick and rope attempt to make it work with IAM. So that's the one of the greatest benefits of secrets manager for me, at least. So I do like it.
And some other times developers ask me, why should I use secrets manager instead of the parameter store? They're pretty similar depending on what you're storing. Similar, yeah. If it's not a database password or a token that I need to rotate frequently, why shouldn't I just go with a parameter store? Well, another reason we haven't mentioned is that sometimes you actually need high read throughput for this kind of parameters. Like Kubus were saying, imagine you change the password and you want all the applications to go and fetch the new value. So there are cases. I was talking, I think it was iRobot, all the Roombas, and sometimes they do a big change and all the Roombas go and have to take, the new parameter value, and they might have spikes of thousands and thousands of parameter read requests. And so the challenge is that parameter store is free, but it does have a concurrent request hard limit that you cannot go beyond it. So in that case, if you want to go beyond that, you can opt for the secrets manager.
Also with secrets manager, I didn't poke around with it too much. I believe you can have multiple values as single secrets unit. So you can, for example, when you say retrieve the secrets, you can say you like key value pair 1, 2, 3, 4, because it looked to be a single unit, but I can't remember.
That's another kind of a different. You can always store a JSON object inside there and then fetch it all and take only what you need. But
that's what people usually do, even for parameter store. They store JSON objects and then just do some. There's a limit to the size of the object, of course, but you cannot use it as a database, maybe.
It's 2048 or 2047. I remember it's just not long enough for a private portion of a key of some kind.
really?
I
Okay.
remember. Yeah.
So-
I ran into that at one point.
Yeah, so that's kind of a thing. I mean, most people who use parameter store and secrets manager do it in JSON and then just parse the output, because that gives you flexibility to do more things instead of having to access multiple secrets. Now, if you want to have separated permissions, you will definitely use multiple secrets, because you can give permissions per secret. So that's the important thing. So if you create a secret, you say, hey, this IAM user or this IAM role policy has permission only to the secret. So then
if
when
you start using a lot of different parameters, you also have the challenge of referencing those parameters, and you need to store the parameter name somewhere in your application. The good news is you can actually query parameters in a hierarchical fashion. So you can say, give me all the parameters under this path, slash my app slash database, and then there you have all the parameters for your database, for example.
That's how you get like, for example, that's a pro tip for parameter store. If you're using parameter store, you can actually get the latest version of our AMIs on parameter store. There are global parameters available. You can reference them straight. Just call that parameter. You will get like the latest AMI version, and it's also referenceable straight from CloudFormation. So that's a great benefit as well. So
I remember Kubus gave me a very nice script for getting all the services available in a region. I remember that script.
Yep.
I keep running it every other week now.
I'm so happy to give you that script. I mean, I spent so much time writing it and building it. Oh wait, no, it's not me. It's Darko.
It was me.
It's Darko. I didn't know that. I'm learning.
That's okay.
But I'll take the credit. It's fine.
It's not your fault.
At least Alex, you haven't confused us.
Sorry, about that script, I'll tell you a fun thing. I discovered that I think it was 2 days ago, and I was checking which services are available in the new Cape Town region and in Milan, the new region in Italy as well. And I just quickly looked at it, and I saw that managed Kafka was now available in Milan, but it wasn't. And then like 5 minutes later, we announced it. I'm like, okay, everything's fine.
There you go.
So you might get interesting hints if you look around the parameters.
Oh yeah. Now we've actually had people actually look at our IAM policies and the definitions for them, and I remember someone spotting a service being launched before it was launched, because suddenly there are these new actions that you can take in IAM, but there's no service attached. It's like, okay, cool, we know what the service is, and then they try to infer what the service was going to be given the actual verbs next to it, which is quite amusing. Yeah, let's have a look quick. So for those that have joined us in the last few minutes, welcome. This is the AWS Africa office hours, and we are here to answer technical questions. I have Darko and Alex with me today. So if you have any questions, please throw them at us. We would love to answer them. So, and pretty much any technical question or any question about AWS, or even random developer / experience questions like, how do you become a cloud developer?
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for that time in the future when developers will ask me questions about like AWS ground station and all this very super cool service. Have you used it, guys? Did you give it a try? Do you have a satellite out there?
I know about that, but I mean, yeah, we've got services to help manage satellites now and satellite data.
Yeah.
I really want to launch a satellite. It could be
like how would that work, right? You know, like. So the ground stations are basically just actual physical ground stations where you connect your own satellites. We don't own satellites, if that's what I understand, right? Okay, so you have to have your own satellites. Okay, check one. That's fine.
Which is much cheaper than building a ground station.
Absolutely, no, absolutely, I agree. So yeah, but I pasted the link with the get parameter thing that Alex was talking about. I just needed to find where is that little script that you can money throw it in.
So Alex, you might not know this one. Yes, we've got the self-promo jar.
Yeah.
Every time if you want a reference, you're welcome to, but you and the rule is you have to put 1 unit of whatever your currency is in there, which suits me very well, seeing as the euro is currently exchanging at 20 multiplier to the South African rand.
I come from Serbia. Wow. We use the Serbian dinar, and it sucks. So I'll give you one. 1 dinar.
Darko, what currency do you use at the moment? Where do you live? That's all I want to say.
I'm a global citizen.
We actually have a question about ground station, guys.
Oh.
Now go for it.
Cool. I think let's grab that one first, and then we'll get to Graham's question after that. Who knows about ground station? Alex, I think you can tell us about it.
So I think the idea is you build a satellite, you launch it in orbit.
Step 1.
Pretty simple, right? And then that's pretty easy. Usually the challenge is how do you communicate with that orbiting satellite? How do you get data and analyze data fairly quickly? The point is this thing is orbiting and you want to collect data when the satellite is above a given station. And that might happen once a day, or once an hour, depending on the speed of the satellite, maybe twice, a few times a day, let's say. And basically what AWS ground station does is it will talk to the satellite, ingest the data, and store it on S3. It's the simplest thing ever.
And
so, yeah, I'm not experiencing the way you let ground station talk to the satellite. If it's IM based, if there is some special protocol, I'm sorry, I haven't tried that yet.
But just to clarify, ground stations, literally, we have got a bunch of ground stations around the world, the physical infrastructure. So you just, shoot the satellite up and then set up, and then you can communicate via our ground stations with it.
I love how blasé we are about that. You just send your satellite up, and you don't have to worry about ground stations at all.
But you take the satellite, you go pew pew, that goes.
Let me go back and launch my satellite now as a demo.
You don't know, guys. Maybe in 20 years there will be satellite developers, LinkedIn networks around.
Exactly. Everybody has like a home-based catapult to reach escape velocity, throw a thing out in the sky, and hey, it's a satellite.
Nope. We're gonna have a space elevator.
A space elevator. Okay. Yeah, that's better. It's cheaper.
Just
yeah.
Up.
Yes.
It takes 4 gigajoules to get one person into orbit. That's how much energy it takes 4 gigajoules to get one 65 kilogram person into orbit.
I was about to say 65 kilograms.
Yeah, I know. It takes 8. It takes a bit more than 8 gigajoules to get me up in the sky.
Cool. We've got another question by Graham. Well,
what services do you interact with as a cloud developer? Well, cloud developer is a pretty broad. It's a pretty broad term. If you're using EC2 and ECS in the last 10 years and you're building applications on top of it, you are also a cloud developer. Maybe you're more into cloud architect kind of role if you're dealing with the infrastructure side of things. As an application developer in the cloud, if that's what you mean, yes, I meet a lot of cloud application developers that use Lambda and they use API Gateway, but you also end up using a lot of the other services or that align with that mindset of not having to provision and deal and maintain virtual infrastructure. You might be using SQS or SNS or Kinesis or S3. Everybody uses S3, no matter what you're building. And then depending on what you're building, you might use RDS or DynamoDB or other kind of data sources, database services.
SimpleDB.
Yes, SimpleDB is still out there being used in the wild. We never deprecate things. There are probably another 10 or 20 services I'm not remembering right now. But it really depends on how you are letting your services or your internal pieces of code talk to each other, communicate. And then depending on what you're building, you might use some of the even higher level services. It could be Amazon Pinpoint for managing emails or email campaigns. It could be Kinesis Analytics for handling real-time data analytics in SQL, or it could be, step functions for orchestrating more complex workflows. It really depends on how you want to design this kind of application in a, let's say, modern cloud native way.
Yep.
Anything you can add, guys?
But yeah, I mean, there's so many things out there, and I would say that I've been working with AWS for 5 years now, right? In AWS, and I have not touched a vast majority of those services, right? And there's usually a core of services you kind of play around with as a cloud developer. Again, it's a very broad term what cloud developer means. So having like, I mean, S3 definitely. The S3 is like the core of anything I do. There's usually something being stored on S3, and Lambda functions are becoming the glue of all the things I do. So that's very much a big thing. Lambda functions and API gateways, but I do a lot of EC2. Like I'm a fan of servers and those things. Coming from that kind of background, so those things. But I would say you can split it into like three things: compute, communication, and storage, right? And everything else around is fluff, right? And everything else is just to make your life that much better. So, but yeah.
So just quickly, side answer to a follow-up question from MD Lawrence around this. I'm going to paste a link there for you quickly to a press article that I found that seems to indicate that yes, the CubeSats from what was it, D-Ion or D-Orbits. That's a very bad name for a company. If I want to launch a satellite, I think deorbit it. There's a whole lot of fun figuring out how to deorbit a satellite. Actually, I don't know if any of you ever read about that, because it's not like let's just take it and go park it somewhere. So because you have to figure out where is it going to land, and you have to take into account air friction and things breaking off, and things breaking off changes the air friction. And so just crashing a satellite into the ocean, which sounds like relatively simple, is incredibly interesting.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah. Lots of fun. Let's quickly have a look here. What else do we have, technical question-wise? I don't see any more questions. Please, people, send us questions. Yesterday we had too many, and now we've got too little. So on average, we're doing well.
Exactly. That's good.
What is that? What is that other great joke? What do you call a great psychic? An above average medium.
Here's a question from Natasha, and you're actually right. It wasn't Darko, it was Kobus. This is about your stream yesterday. Your Let's Go stream. I would say no. I would say no. But again, we can disagree. So if a simple website for marketing for less than 1,000 users per month, depending on what kind of a website is it a simple marketing page that says, hey, whatever, right, register here or doing things? I would say a simple, better way would be to host a static website using something like Amplify. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It
or
takes
Lightsail.
all the, or Lightsail.
If you're a WordPress fan.
Yeah, I would say it's much more, much less effort for that, and you wanna focus your efforts on the good things. So, but feel free, Kobus, to prove me wrong.
No. So basically, it depends on whether or not your site that you want to release needs to do any kind of processing or actions. If it's purely here's a website with some information on it, and you want to be able to add to it. So think, let's say, WordPress style site where you've got sections where you add information to it. Then I would highly recommend you do a static site. The reason for that is that, and since this is the show that I'm in theory running, I don't have to put money in the jar. Dropping a link there to show you where that is an actual video I did about 2 months back about how much time it takes to get a Jekyll site up and running, a Hugo site up and running on Amplify. And the entire video is, let me just get the stat here for you. Ooh, where to go now? I think it's 6 minutes 14 seconds. There we go. Okay. Which includes setting up SSL. So
there we go.
Nice.
Yeah. So just getting the site up itself is, I think, about a minute and a half or a minute, because literally you clone the Hugo, or create a Hugo site locally, add the theme that you want to it, populate it, and then what you do is push it to GitHub. And then it's a question of, in the Amplify console, it's click, connect to GitHub, and it picks up, oh, this is a Hugo site, let me deploy it, and you click save. And then wait about 30 seconds, 40 seconds, the site is up. And then it's a case of adding the DNS for it.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, it's really, really quick. So honestly, if you don't need any functionality to process information or anything like that, it's purely a consumption-based site, then go with a static website.
Yeah.
Just quickly, Alex, is that a cat?
What cat? No, I have no cats here. It might be my neighbor.
Okay.
Moving something, yeah, because there's a sound I haven't heard on the stream before. It's like
Yeah,
could be
they're
a
moving
young
from,
Wookiee.
A Wookiee.
Yeah.
You may have a Wookiee in your pocket.
No, I
Actually had
wish.
to-
I'm actually a dog person, guys. But
Okay.
Awesome. I know my dog went out because she's annoying.
I'm a dog person, but I have a cat. So I inherited a cat. I got rented this apartment, and the last renter basically, hey, do you want a cat? I'm like, what?
So
He just gave me a cat. So
no, Docker, you completely misunderstand this relationship.
okay.
The cat decided it
you
wants a
were
new
given
human.
to him. Yeah.
So I'm the cat. Okay, and I would get that because the cat hates me. The cat is just like meows at the door, open up, I want food, has some food, and goes out. Doesn't care about me as a person. We haven't talked. It's been like that for 2 years, and I feel I violated. But hey, I had to close the door because otherwise it would scream during my stream. So
Nice. So double check quickly. I think Stuart Rules is. I saw him. He was there
he
for
was yesterday on
yesterday's
stream.
stream.
Yesterday on stream, yeah.
So I believe he was asking us a lot of questions about how to get started with Docker. So I'm very happy that you are playing with it today already and getting things running, because Docker is a whole lot of fun.
It is.
Yeah, as a dev that used to struggle with getting things built and deployed, Docker makes it just so easy. So yeah, everybody should. If you're building apps, those kind of apps, I highly recommend go play with Docker and try and get your application run inside Docker. Granted, there are some other complications, but there's nothing stopping you from running a monolith inside Docker.
Yeah. You can do. He's a WSL or Windows subsystem for Linux. You can do it, but you need WSL 2 because WSL 1 doesn't support a nested virtualization. So Docker on Windows with WSL 1 is so you need the latest Windows 2004 update to get this running. I know I have Windows running here, and I was struggling to get that working. So yeah, you need WSL 2 to have proper Docker setup locally.
I'm assuming the 2004 was a build number, not a.
Yeah, it's a build number. Yeah, it's weird. It's the 2020, so everything is a 2000 something, including Ubuntu and hey, can you get Ubuntu?
Yeah, but that's a 20 dot.
The dot.
Off by one errors.
Yeah, exactly. So you need that latest version, or you can run just native Windows Docker, but it's better to use Linux on it. So if you're using Windows already, so I would highly advise. I use that, and I have also a little Intel thingy that basically I just use for my Docker, and it can do its job. So easy as that. So don't have to complicate things.
Or Cloud9, guys.
Or Cloud9,
Why
yeah. Exactly. Use Cloud9 as a text editor or a code editor, sorry, and then host your containers there. But if you're doing containers of Cloud9, expand the 8 gigs to something more. So I ran into issues where I would launch the default Cloud9 environment and it had 8 gigs of storage, and I would do a few things in that and a few containers and just fills up the storage. Yeah. I've tried.
Yes, I was about to say, I'm very certain you did, which is why I popped this question up here. Please tell us. I know exactly the product description, and that's it.
So if you ever used Access back in 2003, that. But it gives you the ability to create. So here's the thing. We call it a no-code application. But in essence, it's just your easy way to create a front-end or a logic interaction with some data in a database. And it's not a database. It's if you ever use Microsoft Access, which is like a local database thing, it's like Excel on steroids, right? And you can create these lovely front ends with some forms to fill in or get the data out. Basically that, but with a lot more bells and whistles. You can do things such as create a mobile app. You can basically host it on a phone. Well, not host it, access it through a phone. You can have it as a website. So it gives you the ability to create these lovely, simple applications that are just some form filling, or like, hey, you want to create a registration page, you can do it through Honeycode. So it is really great. And kind of to put the money in the jar, if you want to see what Honeycode is, what Honeycode was 2 months ago, I did a video on it on my YouTube channel. So it's great. I think the entire hype around it, it's no code, nobody will have to develop anymore. No, it's not that. It's basically just a a 2020 version of Microsoft Access in the cloud, and it just works good. It does its job. I'm not trashing on it. I'm just saying my experience with this kind of tool was basically Access 2003, right? That's how it looks, but it's of course much more refined, and the ability to one-click host it on for mobile phones and web applications is just.
And you also get a kind of a freemium model, right? So for small applications with not like tens of thousands of rows in your tables, let's say, you know, you can basically build stuff for free. And
absolutely,
I kind of like that.
Once
and you
I
can also
noticed,
integrate like actions and send emails and notifications. So it's not just data management and you know, data input output. You can actually send notifications and do interesting stuff with other cloud services without even knowing what Amazon SNS is or Pinpoint and so on.
Yeah.
Cool. I do realize that we are on the hour and we should be finishing up, but there's this one little question from MD Lawrence. Quickest answer to that is come join Dark on myself tomorrow morning at 11 Central European time. So 2 hours ago from whatever your current time zone is. We actually do a lot of CDK and Terraform and CloudFormation, and we can have lots of discussions there while we build infrastructure as code things out. I've got a strong opinion, Doc has a strong opinion, and they're not exactly the same, which is fun.
That's fun. That's okay.
And with that, let's wrap this up. Thank you very, very much, Alex and Darko, for joining us today. It was a lot of fun again, chatting about satellites and things. I actually want to now go play and, well, at least look at the service. I don't have a satellite to play with it, unfortunately.
You don't.
Yes. But yeah, thanks for joining us. And like I said, this is a session that runs every single week. Please come join us. And quick question. Sorry, I'm sidetracked. A 1084.
What's a 1084?
What's that quickly? I'm curious.
It is. No, that's 1081. It's a 1081 monitor.
Okay.
My monitor. It's a Commodore 1081, so not 1084.
Okay. But Stuart, definitely come visit us tomorrow in the stream. We can continue and talk and look at Darko's old computers. He's got a lot. But with that, thanks everyone. I'm going to end the broadcast now, and see you to a future session. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, guys.